G'day everyone. Every year at this time of the year I get asked for an elf pattern, and every year I refuse. This year it's different. This year I've caved, and I'm here today to bring you a beautiful little elf pattern. I've intentionally made it very, very simple and quick, so you're all able to punch out a few before that big day. I have the free pattern ready for you in the description box below. You'll find a link that says more, just say where it says see more, click on that there. It'll open up the box and you'll find that pattern link. You can print out your own free pattern templates on your own home printer. Make sure that you follow the measuring bar that I put on every page. It's going to make sure that all of your pattern pieces are correct, and I'm going to show you just how quick and easy it is to make a little Christmas elf. Let's make a beautiful little elf. Now I am using traditional greens, reds and whites, and you don't have to do that. You can certainly make these any colour you like because it's so distinctly a little elf. As long as you add a little bit of a stripe in there, you'll get that overall look. I would love to see them made up in all sorts of different candy colours, but I have the greens and the reds, so I'm going to use that. So we start with our 4 body pieces, which are interfaced with our fusible woven cotton interfacing, very important. Those 4 there, this is so simple to put together, this one. Then we need, for arms and legs, we need some knit fabric. My knit fabric is just a cotton lycra. I've put right sides together, cut a piece big enough to accommodate my 2 arm templates, and I've traced around them. Make sure whatever you trace around with, either that it's a heat erasable marker or it's something that won't show when you turn it through. It's important that you use a knit fabric for the arms and legs, otherwise they won't turn through, or it will certainly be very difficult. They're also a lot softer and floppier if they're made with knit fabric. So similarly, we're going with the legs. I've done the same thing, right sides together with my knit fabric, and this is where the stripe comes in, traced around those as well. We will be stitching directly on the line. Then we need a little face. A little face is felt that is interfaced the same as the body. Okay, so 2 of those. And I've also put my markings in for the eyes. They're not set in stone because your sewing might be different to mine and they may not match up when you go to put it all together. So use a heat erasable marker, but it does give you a good guide to begin with. And then we have a collar. So just to give you an idea how this is all going to be put together, we have a nice sort of a court jester kind of a collar. This one is cut from double felt. It's got a mark there that gives us our central point. That will sit there first, and then the little face will sit over it. And it's going to give us that indication of a lovely Christmassy sort of a collar, which we will be blanket stitching, and you can add some little beads if you like on each of the points, and I'll certainly show you how to do that. I will be using gold. And similarly on the front belly, I will be adding 2 little sparkly buttons. You don't have to add the buttons, but it does make it look like a little suit when you do that. So definitely a nice addition. You will need a button. This one is around about 25 millimeters, something around that size. It can be 2-hole or 4-hole. That's to attach the head to the body. So no joints in this one. For the hat, we just take our 2 pieces of felt. We're going to trace around our template, large enough to accommodate that piece and room for a little seam allowance. Again, we're going to be sewing around it. When we turn it through, we're going to be adding a trim to the edge that sits over the head. So anything, you can use anything for a trim. I'm going to dive into my stash and see what I've got there. I'm sure I'll have something. You'll need your pearl threads in a few colours. I'm going to line the collar with gold. I could have done it with red, a little matchy-matchy, but I'm going to go with gold because the little baubles on the end will be gold. And I will need some green for the top, closing the body. You'll also need your extra strong thread, also a pearl thread to suit the colour we're going to be closing the top of the head with pearl thread. Now you'll notice that I've matched my arms to the face colour, so it looks like he's got bare arms. You could make the arms out of the stripe as well if you wanted, or whatever your knit is for the legs, you could do it for the arms as well. Totally up to you. I have 2 tiny little doll buttons for eyes. You could use beads, and we will be sewing a tiny little smile in there. Certainly need some clear craft glue and some polyester filling. I'm going to be adding a little bit of weight to mine just so he sits really well, because he is a shelf sitter. And I will be using a little bit of fine aquarium gravel. You can use anything. You can use actual plastic pellets that are used for weighting soft toys. And that's about it. Now let's get started on the body. So we do need to sew our arms and legs first before we make the body, because they're being inserted into the seams of the body. So what we're going to do is take these pieces that we've already prepared to the machine. I'm going to be using a ballpoint needle, a jersey needle, to sew this knit fabric. It does make it easier. And I'm going to be sewing directly on the line. I'm leaving the top edge open, and I'm going to sew directly on the line all the way. I bring my stitch length down to a 2 at least. On the right fabric you can even bring it down smaller. And then when you've done that, we're going to cut those out across the top line there, and then leave a tiny seam all the way around. We're going to do exactly the same thing with the arms. Make sure that the thread is a good colour match. Top left open, sew around here, then we're going to cut them out. So let's now stuff those legs. We'll start with the legs. This is what the little completed leg looks like, with a little simple knee joint. We are going to start by taking our pattern template. You've got a line across here. All I want you to do is make a little mark somewhere here on the leg piece once it's turned through. Make sure you've really pushed all those seams out as well. Use a heat erasable marker for that, and then we're going to fill with polyester filling the lower part of the leg. Do that with forceps, it's the easiest way. I'm going to take that down. Now when you're working with a knit fabric in making dolls and stuffing, it would be very easy to overfill them and lose all those lovely curves and design shape. So it's kind of a little bit of a learning process. If you're used to working with just stable fabrics, well then of course you can only stuff it so hard. But with this, I want the foot filled nice and firm, and be very careful to be watching the shape the whole time you're doing that. I mean, we do that with our stable fabrics as well, but the knit fabric can easily blow out to, you know, another sort of undesirable shape. So we want to keep the little foot shape so the foot can be nice and firm. This one is quite solid. You see there's not much give there at all. And then as we move up the leg, we just soften it off a little bits at a time, because we don't want them to be lumpy. Bring that down and watch your center seam too, that everything is being stuffed evenly. So what I want you to do is continue to fill up until it's probably, let me feel there, about 1.5 centimetres from the mark you've made. So I'm going to finish my stuffing about here, and then I want absolutely no stuffing till this point. The reason for that is if we stuff it super firm, it's very hard for us to sew that knee joint in, and also then the bottom of the leg won't drop beautifully like that. It'll tend to stick out, so we want it to drop. So fill just to 1.5 centimetres from your mark. Make sure it's all nice and even, and then take it to your machine, match up the front and the back seams, and just stitch across about 3 times back and forth. Then you can remove your little mark with a hot iron. And then we're going to continue to fill right up the top. Now this time, when we fill up to this line here, this stitching line, pack that knee really firm, just like you did the foot. Pack up to about, again, a centimetre and a half from the end for the same reason. We don't want the leg to be poking straight out from the body. We want it to have a nice natural drop, and that will also make it easier for adding it to the body. When you finish stuffing, just stitch across with a little tacking stitch just to hold it closed. And then for the arms, they are just filled all the way until about 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres from the end, for exactly the same reason again. When we add this to the seam of our doll, if we fill it right to the end, the arms will sit out. If we leave that lovely inch space, they'll drop naturally to the side of the body, and that's exactly what we want. Same thing, we're going to stitch across just to seal those edges, and the lower hand part I pack quite firm. So with my legs and arms all done, we can move them aside, and we're going to start on the body pieces. So we've got our front and our back body pieces, they're both exactly the same. And we are going to put right sides together. Now we're going to put the centre front seam and the centre back seam together. It's where the little belly is there, and this here where your marks are, that's the side seam. So there's no marks on here. Those are the two edges that you put together. Make sure they're well lined up. I will overcast, and then I will sew a 4mm seam allowance 2 times on the machine, and I will do the same, exactly the same thing with this one. Now on your front piece, once you have those centre and back seams sewn, go ahead and roll those seams out. I've also removed my overcasting stitch so that I can open the seams out. It just keeps them nice and straight. I've added my buttons. Now if you are adding buttons to the front or something on the front, you need to leave 5 centimetres from the base, and that will have that button sitting right where it should, where his belly sits. Okay, if you drop it down lower, it's going to be in completely the wrong place. And I've just added the second one here. His little head will sit here, and you can add any kind of embellishment there you like. Now the other thing I've done is I have just tacked into place the legs. So with toes pointing inward, so with right sides together, and just 1 centimetre from your seam. Okay, so it just gives him the right little amount of leg spread, if you like, when he's sitting down, and those knees wider will bring it out too wide. So just 1 centimetre from the centre seam, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the arms, and you've got marks on your pattern piece. And there's actually marks on your pattern piece for the legs as well. We are going to line up with this lower mark, the arm. Again, right sides together, facing inwards, and then when we pop the back on, everything is nicely sandwiched within that seam. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm just going to tack it into place, both sides, and tuck it in. Now I have arms and legs just tacked in place, and now we want to tuck everything in. I'm going to take those arms upwards and those little legs upwards, and we're going to put right sides together. We're going to start at the base here, and this is where your seams opened up is going to help you line up perfectly at the base there. And then we're simply going to match it up all the way, incorporating those little legs and arms as we go, and we sew all the way up to the second mark. So we go all the way around, tucking in all those legs and arms, and we leave this top section open, and that top section is where we're going to pull everything through. So I will overcast it completely, definitely overcast it, and then that seam allowance is 4 millimetres. What am I thinking? 4 millimetres, same as always, and you sew 2 times. Just make sure when you're going over those arms and leg joins there that you go over them a couple of times so they're really nice and secure. You can go ahead and turn that whole body through, and you can see we've got this gorgeous little body with arms and legs already attached, and make sure that you really roll out those seams. And you can see what I mean about those little arms being able to fold over rather than sticking out. Okay, so now we're going to stuff this body. We're going to close this top opening with a blanket stitch with our pearl thread, which I've got here ready. And I'm going to add a little bit of weight in the bottom, so I'm just going to use a little bit of aquarium gravel, just some clean white aquarium gravel, and it'll add a little bit of weight in the base. It just means that he'll sit beautifully. You don't have to add that weight. And if you're looking for something other than aquarium gravel or your plastic pellets, you certainly can just use dry white rice. If you are going to do that, obviously it can't be in a damp sort of environment, and also it's useful to put one of those little silica gel packets in with it as well to keep the moisture down. The little packets that you find often in things when you purchase shoes and that sort of thing. I always keep all those, they're very handy. So I'm going to add a little bit of my aquarium gravel, and then I'm going to pack the rest in with my just my polyester filling, and I'm going to fill all the way up to the top. Now, if you follow me, you'll know that a key essential in your toolkit is a wool felting needle, and we're going to use that felting needle to pack all of that polyester filling in, and we want to be able to just close that top opening. And you do want this body to be quite firm so that it will sit up well. You can add a clip at the top there if you want, hold that together so that you're lining everything up. And I'm simply going to sew that blanket stitch, and I will start with 2 stitches, one on top of the other. So I'm taking my needle through both layers and bringing my needle out through the thread loop. I'm going to go over that stitch again, just so that start is really secure. And then just simply continue on. My stitches are really small, they're only about 2 to 3 millimeters. Coming through that thread loop each time is going to bind that top edge. Which means we won't have any of those raw edges showing. So you can see how it's pulling together beautifully. And I'm going to continue on with that all the way over, make sure I anchor in those seams at the top and finish off down here. So now with our body all done, we can pop little elf body aside, and we're going to start working on the head. The first thing I do is I'm going to sew in a little mouth line. Remember, we already put in some tentative eye spots there. They may shift as we put this together, but I have lined up with the center seam here a little mouth I've just used one of my templates here, one of my stencils. You can use the end of a little cotton reel, anything like that, to make a little smile. And you can make it tiny, you can make it wider if you like. I'll be blushing these cheeks just a little bit when the doll is all finished. But the important thing is to make sure that this smile is 2 centimeters from the lowest part of the chin, because we've got a seam going in here. If you take it down lower, it's going to be tucking under. So 2 centimeters from the bottom of the chin is the perfect spot for the lowest part of the smile. I'm now taking my pearl thread in 8 ply. I've got a knot in the end of a single strand. All I'm going to do is stitch straight over that with a linked back stitch. Now, you can certainly do this on the machine if you would prefer, but I want it to be quite a significant little mouth that shows. Just caught my thread there. There we go. And by linking this stitch together, coming up on the underside and bringing my needle back through the last exit hole, we'll get a lovely even and straight line all the way across. And I've drawn that in with a heat erasable marker, so I can then take it to my iron and remove any residual marks, and we'll have a lovely clean little smile. Okay, so I've sewn that lower chin curve from the base of each ear, and then I have turned that through, and I've really rolled out that seam, and make sure you've kept that lovely little shape there of chin and cheeks. Now we're going to glue together the ears, and we're going to need to leave those to sit and dry for a little bit, so just open that up. I'm going to take just some clear craft glue and coat just the back of the ear, but only the ear, and line that up and seal those edges shut. I find it a good idea to put a clip in there following that line of the chin, and I'll do the same on the other side. And we're going to let that sit and dry completely. While it's drying, we're going to get on with some work on the collar. Okay, so I've got down to where the point is, and before I do my next stitch, which will be right on the end of the point, I'm going to take my needle through one of my beads, bring it right down to sit where I want it, and then I'm going to take my next stitch right there, and it's just going to hold it. I actually do have a video also on the beaded blanket stitch, which is what this is, except we're just doing one little bead on the corner. And then I'll just keep that tension up, and I'll continue with my stitching until I get to the next point, and just repeat that process on every point. Okay, that has that collar all done, and you can see very sweet with those little baubles on the end. So now this is all dry, we can go ahead and start filling this. I'm going to leave my little clips in place while I'm filling the head. What we're looking to do is just give it some volume. It won't be, we're not filling it to be a big round ball, it's just going to be a nice eclipse shape, and it does give the head some nice plumpness rather than just a flat face. So this is where our wool felting needle comes in really handy here, because obviously this is a fairly open cavity at the top, and it wants to pop back out again at us. So if you've got your felting needle, you'll be able to tuck it all in there and it will stay put, which I will do as I'm working on it. I'll get my needle in there and start packing it all in, and you want to be really filling out those lovely curves, and I'm going to fill it till almost the top here, and it's very much like we did with the top of the body here, where we follow that shape and we just tuck it all in, because then we're going to close from the base of each ear all the way around the head again with a blanket stitch. I've got that all filled up, that head there, and I've put a little clip at the top matching up that centre, and I have gone in there with my felting needle and tucked it all in. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to remove my lower clip here. Now I've got a matching pearl thread to my felt colour. I've got a single strand again with a knot in the end. I'm going to take my needle in through the opening in the head, and I'm going to bring my needle out right on that lower edge of the ear. That knot will hold, and then I simply need to sew that same little blanket stitch. Keep your stitch quite small with this one. We don't want to interfere with the shape of the head too much. And we keep them really tiny, so it's just sort of outlining the edge there, and it's going to close up those raw edges and cover those. Don't try and do this until this glue is dry, or everything will shift and move. And just continue on around the ear, all the way around the top of the head, and finish off at the base of the other ear. So that has that little head all filled out and stitched up. Lovely little shape there. Now we're going to add the eyes. So I'm just using little tiny buttons, but they have very small holes. They are actually for dolls' clothes. So the way I'm going to add mine might be a little bit different, but you can just add your buttons in the usual way, going back and forth through, but make sure you get some nice pull in on them. So for me, I've got a double strand of extra strong thread, and I'm going to come in at the back. I have checked that my little marks are indeed the correct placement, which they are. So I'm going to pull those threads through. I'm going to pick up one of my buttons and take my needle through the back, and it'll just pull through. Then I'm going to go back in to the button from the front and the opposite side, and then I'm going to dive in right on that mark and bring my needle out pretty close to the other one. So now I've got that little eye. I'm going to make sure it's not twisted, and I can pull on those two threads from behind, and what I'll do is I'll just tie them off together at the back there. I'll knot that off about 3 times. So then I've got all of that lovely pull in, and then I just repeat with the other eye. So that finishes up that little face, and you can see how much nicer it is to add the eyes after the head is stuffed and you get that nice little pull in there. So that's going to sit beautifully just on that collar and be attached to the body. For the last thing we need to make though is his little hat. So I have traced on my felt, and I've got 2 pieces of felt together, and I've traced around my template. I'm going to take this to the machine and sew directly on that line and leave this whole edge open. You only need to sew it once, and then we're going to cut that out with a very small seam allowance and cut right on this line. Do make sure you go back and forth on your start and finish here and here, so that when we turn it through that it doesn't pop open. So that has my little hat all stitched and turned through and again rolled out. That gives us a nice plump soft little finish. You can of course add something to the top of that hat. I'm going to keep it just nicely rounded, and now you can just trim the edge with whatever you like. So it can be something like this. I'm just going to line some ric-rac around the edge of mine. You could do a beaded blanket stitch, you could just blanket stitch it, whatever you like. A little lace trim would work really well. So I'm just going to get that stitched into place, and then we will put our little doll together. So now we have all our parts, let's put this little cutie together. So what I've done is I have taken a long double strand of extra strong thread and passed it through my medium doll needle. With the little hat, I've just stitched that. Just a couple of stitches through has kept that nicely in place. The positioning of all of this, the back of the collar should sit with the hat line, okay? And it's the mark that's on the inside here should line up with the eyes. So where we mark the eyes, and that will give you just the right amount of length underneath here showing the collar, and you can see that the ears just sit halfway with that collar poking out. So when we go to take our needle through at the back, we know exactly where to take a needle through our other pieces. Now this is kind of tricky to show you on camera, but I'll show you the process and then show you as it's done. Where this button needs to sit is about 1 centimetre from the top edge. We're going to go through the button. We're only using 2 holes. We're going to go through the button through the body, making sure that it's 1 centimetre down. We're going to come out. Make sure when you're taking your needle through that you're going straight through, not on an angle, so straight through. Then we get to our collar piece, and our collar piece, we've got our mark. And we're going to come one side of that mark as we're going through from the body. Then we're going to get to the head. And at the back of the head on this side, we're going to go right between the eyes. We're going to take a nice big deep stitch across, keep it nice and even, pull it through, and then you're going to travel back through the body, the collar and the button hole on the opposite side at the back. So the whole thing will be connected on those 2 threads that run through everything. Okay, I'm going to put that together and show you how that looks when it's all strung up. Okay, so here's our little guy. You can see that the positioning of this is all perfect if you just follow those guidelines. And what I've got, you can see from the side here, through the button, through the body, through the collar, back between the eyes at the back of the head with that big stitch, then travel back on the other side, come out the other side of the button. And now all we need to do is pull all of that in, and we can knot these 2 groups of threads together nice and tight. Make sure that you've got some nice posability with that head, which we do. Knot that off nice and firm at least 4 times. You can either just snip those thread ends, or you can rethread them, take them through the hole and out the body. I always just snip my thread ends. I don't mind those little tufts poking out. It just all adds to that little homemade sort of a look. So you can see it gives him a beautiful little upward tilt to his head. And if you're finding that the positioning is not right, pull it all out, rethread it through until you've got that positioning just perfect. So this is our little guy all finished. I have just taken a pastel pencil and just coloured up his cheeks. You can use just a polychromo pencil, just an ordinary pencil will colour his cheeks up. Even blush, even your own makeup blush will do, or just leave them blank. I do like those little rosy cheeks. You can see that you'll be able to sit him in your Christmas decor, cover him with all sorts of other Christmas things that I don't have around the house, but I'm sure you're all more Christmassy than me and not Grinchy at all, I'm sure. But he will look equally as well sitting on a shelf, of course. Classic little elf on a shelf. I hope he was worth the wait. So thank you all for joining me as always, and I hope to see lots of these beautiful little Christmas elves pop up. Would like to see them in other colours. Green and red are not my favourite colours together, but for the sake of this little elf, I thought it was a great combo. But I would like to see purples and greens and pinks and yellows, and sky's the limit. Anyway, go ahead and share them on our Facebook page if you are going to make them up in some other colours. I definitely want to see those. I'll put the link down below for you to join our Facebook page, where you can share all of your creations. Anything you make with my patterns, you can show those off on that page. Do show them off. We love to see them, and it does inspire absolutely all of us. I'm feeling so much better now. I'm really on a roll. I may even pop out another Christmas pattern for you all. You never know. So stay tuned. In the meantime, everybody, have a fantastic creative week. Remember to pay all of those good things forward. And until next time, it is hooroo from me.